We all know that getting our precious electronics wet is never a good idea. But have you ever stopped to think why this is actually the case? As it turns out, it is not the presence of water per se that is the problem. It is more to do with ions. Natural water tends to be loaded with minerals like calcium, magnesium, iron, copper, and more. Moisture in the air has other contaminants from air pollution. When dissolved in water, these contaminants form tiny charged particles called ions. Being charged, these little particles are able to conduct electricity with ease. They effectively turn water into an electrolyte. When electronics get wet, the ions cause electricity to go where it is not supposed to go, leading to a short and causing damage, often terminally. Shorting, as the name suggests, is when electrical current travels along an unintended path in a circuit with little or low electrical impedance. This damages electrical circuits by causing overheating, which can render sensitive components permanently damaged. Integrated circuits are the most at risk, with components like accelerometers, microelectromechanical systems, and optical devices usually being the most prone to water damage. Since they are sealed, chips tend to have some protection, but if water does enter them, it is very difficult to remove it. However, there are many non-moisture sensitive parts on electrical circuits too. You can even use non-ionized water like distilled water to clean some parts of PCBs and ICs. Some solder is also water-soluble. In fact, components like Arduino boards can work just fine submerged in water, especially distilled water. But over a long enough time, electrolysis will likely take its toll. Corrosion is another big factor that damages electronics when they get wet. Water can activate some salts and other materials on a PCB, which can corrode metal components. It essentially turns some parts into little acid batteries. But not all water is equal. Depending on the source, the ion content of water will vary. For example, potable drinking water tends to have few ions in it. It is for this reason that it is actually a pretty poor electrical conductor. According to some experiments, distilled water has a resistance around 10 times greater than typical tap water. Seawater, on the other hand, is packed with ions. So if you are going to drop an electronic device into water, make sure it isn't at the seaside. However, it is not just an accidental water egress that can be a problem. Most electrical systems, whether they be a network server or the delicate avionics on an airplane, have humidity and temperature control systems designed to reduce or eliminate moisture from getting into the delicate electrical circuits. It is a perennial problem that can affect even the best engineered systems. But what can you do to save electronics after you've got them wet? While this does work to some extent, studies show it is better to just remove all the covers and leave the water to evaporate in a warm, dry environment. But this too is not always effective. According to experts, the best thing to do is follows. The very first thing you should do is remove the power supply. You should then attempt to remove as much excess water as possible. You can do this using heat, but make sure it is not hot enough to also damage components. Desiccant packs are another good choice too. If you want to go to the extreme, you can place the sodden electrical device in a vacuum after removing batteries and other vacuum-sensitive components. This should remove all volatile gases or liquids, like water, from the circuits. Flux remover can be used to remove any residue that may be left on circuit boards. You will usually also need to check the component's leads for any signs of damage or corrosion. Any damaged parts will need to be replaced, especially those with moisture sensitivity levels of 3. You can get that information from the data sheets of a circuit's components. While getting your phone or another expensive electronic device wet may be a harrowing experience, it may not by the end. you can rescue them with a little tender loving care.